Um, we're really excited about this panel, by the way. We've got Brandon. This is the fourth time he's been here, Brandon O'Sullivan. This is the fourth time he's been here for our Tech Talks. And we have Elaine Hayden, who has been coming to our peer sessions quite regularly. She's a house concert host you're in Texas, right? Yeah. And we've got Louise Baker and Bruce Swan, who have also been hosting a lot of amazing concerts, among other things. They wear many hats. And they've been regulars at our Tech Talks as well. And they're going to share some of their insight. They've been hosting some multi-performer showcases that have been phenomenal. So I'm going to do a quick round the room and have everybody say hi and introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with the nuts and bolts of this. So Brandon O'Sullivan, please say hi to the people.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? My name is Brandon. I run, basically, I just do digital event management mostly for people. I mostly work with concerts. I've been doing a lot of political fundraisers and things like that, and sort of stepping more and more into sort of just like higher end, higher production quality broadcasting is sort of what my main focus is now. But I mostly still work with small concerts with most of my clients, and I do graphic design and video work as well. So that's about it for
Cool.
me.
Cool. For now.
For now.
So Elaine Hayden, thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. I basically have had a house concert series since 2008. My series physically is located between Austin, Texas and San Antonio, Texas in New Braunfels. It's NB House Concerts. And our last in-person show was March 8th. After coming to Farm and listening to them, we decided to set up something similar through Swerfa. After a couple of months of doing no shows, I just decided to get into the fray and set up a fall series on Zoom, starting in July, and we'll be going through December right now. Monthly. It's a monthly series. So that's a little bit
Awesome.
about it.
We'll hear a lot more about that when the time comes. So, and Louise Baker and Bruce Swan sharing a window screen today. Nice to see you both. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us. Howdy, everybody. Basically, like many of us, everything evaporated: tours, history, venues, festivals, conferences. And we decided that what could we do to help artists? What could we do to help ourselves? And what could we do to maintain and build community? And we came up with a weekly series of concerts in a showcase format, with our criteria being an artist that would have been playing at one of the more sought out guerrilla showcases, a formal showcase, or in the case of NERFA, a semi or a formal showcase. And so that was our criteria. We sent out 60 invitations and filled up 80 spots, or 80% of the spots, within 5 hours. So we thought that we were onto something. We're now into our 14th concert tonight. We've presented 65 artists, and we've taken in over $10,000 that we've distributed amongst the venue and the artists, all on donation base and all through registration and through Zoom. So we've been very lucky to have stumbled upon this. We're grateful for all the assistance that Farm has done, and the real, I've said this 100 times publicly and privately, the real leadership position that this organization has taken has been really vital, and I think has built and established a really fantastic, selfless network of assistance. So that's my 30 seconds.
Aw, thanks, Bruce. Louise?
Well, for me, I do wear a lot of hats, or I used to. Former talent buyer for ISIS Music Hall, which closed up in March. I'm also a booking agency. I have 5 clients. Bruce is my partner. I've become the Zoom tech for his series. So this has been a time where I've continued to stay in communication, and a lot of it is through folks that are here at this webinar today, in order to promote my artists and book some online shows. I'll talk about that later, how I've incorporated Zoom for the shows here in Asheville, and work with Bruce. So I'm happy to be here, and thanks to Brandon and to Annie for all we have learned in the last 5 months.
Yeah, invaluable.
Awesome. All right, you guys, I'm going to put links up in the chat because, oh, Elaine, thank you for adding your for adding your thing. But I've added links to everybody's contact information in the chat, so you have it up front, and we'll do that a few more times as we go. All right, well, I'm going to dive right into my portion of the demonstration here and hope that my screen share doesn't go wonky on me this time. I don't think it will. As you know, you guys, I've been doing these. Oh, see, that's not even the one I wanted to share. Doggone it. The farm, the most experience I've been having, in addition to our own a couple of concerts that I've been doing with Rod, has been working with Farm and doing these. For goodness sakes, sorry guys, I'm going to go right into the. Just going to have to do it myself. I've been setting up these lovely Zoom events through the Farm thing and using the registration process. So can you even see this? Can you see the registration? Brandon, can you nod to me? Do I have it right? Oh, look, I do have it right. I'm sorry, I can see it over here. You can see the meeting thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, so I'm going to walk through the whole idea of scheduling a meeting with the registration using the Zoom features that it has for registration, which are really powerful. And to me, they make life so much easier. And we'll get going right away. We're going to schedule a meeting. Hopefully, most of you have this information or for goodness sakes, know how to schedule a meeting. I'm going to call this our awesome concert meeting. And I am not going to enter a big description, but for me, what I would recommend here is a brief summary about your performer, some information about your series, give your audience an opportunity to ask for help and at every step of the way, so that they, yep.
Hey, and it's the screen share isn't showing the
you.
schedule a meeting pop up.
Oh my goodness.
It's stuck on just the website.
Sorry, guys.
There you go.
All right. No, it's all right. I was typing poorly. Anyways, here we go. Awesome concert series. Clearly, I'm better at a moderator than a demonstrator, but let's just leave it here. So as I was saying, give your description. This is a good place to also include payment information if you want to give people the opportunity to add tips up front. Dates, self-explanatory. I'm trusting that most people know how to kind of do this part. So we're going to zip right through it, but we're going to do a 4 p.m. concert, your duration. I usually go longer than I anticipate the concert to be. But this is the most important part right here. Is you click that required button under registration. The rest of this I usually leave at default. And for now, we're just going to do that. And we're going to click Save Meeting. So now we have a meeting. We have what looks like a usual meeting in here, but this link is now linking you to a registration form. Which we'll look at in just a moment. But you've also got all this information down here at the bottom of the screen. And so there's 5 sections. We're going to focus on the first 3. Right here under registration, you've got manage attendees. We're going to look at that in a little bit. But the first thing I do is under registration options. And I'm going to tell you, I've written this in a complete document that I'm going to share a link with. It's got step-by-step in here and is walks through absolutely everything I'm doing. So I'm doing this quickly. Click your edit, and here you've got several options. On the registration portion, I always leave automatically approve on. There are reasons to do manually approve. Personally, I haven't needed it, and you can always go in and edit your registration. And this is just adding more work for you, so I wouldn't do that. If you're doing a house concert and you want to know as people register, this is a great option to have the host get emailed every time somebody registers. Otherwise, you can just log into your account and check the registrations. Another thing that's not automatically checked is this close registration after event date, and I always check that button. These 2 I would leave checked. You want people to join from anywhere, and also social share buttons are important. Now you could quit here and save all and leave everything else as default, but here's the option for questions to add to your form. If you want to know where people are coming from, include the city, You know, zip code is good if you're adding people to a mailing list. State phone number would be a really good thing to add, certainly for a concert if you need to contact people. And you may want to make this a required thing. I use the required button very sparingly because we don't want people to have to work too hard to attend your concert. And leaving questions and comments, a nice spot for that is also good. Again, you can stop here if you want, but one of the things I really love is the opportunity to add custom questions. And for those of you who are doing concerts, house concerts, and maybe some of your attendees are, you know, on the more computer scared side, this is an option to add something like, you know, do you need help with joining the meeting, right? And you can find out in advance. At this point, they can either answer the word yes, or you can turn this into a drop down option, no, maybe. And this is a great place to collect more information. I would keep a lot of this as generic as possible, and I'll explain that in a little bit too. But this is where you can add that question. It's defaulting to required. If you miss it here, you can uncheck that box here. So you don't necessarily need to have that information, but this gives people an option to tell you in advance if they think they might need help. At this point, I'm going to click Save All. And now I have my basic registration form completed. I'm going to move into the email settings at this point. And what the email settings is this is the email that your attendees are going to get after they register. And there's an email contact that shows up in the email. You can change this if for some reason you want somebody else to manage the questions, or if you have a tech person that's handling things, you can change this email to somebody else. Most of the time, we're just going to keep it to the host. Over here, the email, the confirmation email, this is your opportunity to edit this information they get. And you can change the topic. Right now, it just sort of defaults to the name of your concert and then confirmation or meeting. But there are two boxes below and above the information that to join the meeting. And you can add things like, you know, feel free to join up to 30 minutes early. You know, if your start time is 4 and you want to tell people they can join at 3:30, or a little bit more about the performer. You can do pretty much anything here. Down here, if you wanted to add things like advanced tips, again, PayPal information, lots of stuff you can add here. And again, this is a preview of the email that your attendees are going to get. And so they can also cancel their registration through this email. They're going to get a unique link that's only good for them. So maybe up here you put, please don't share this with other people. Send them to the registration form. Everybody should have their own unique link. And this is where that email, please submit any questions to that I was showing you about editing earlier. Okay, so right now we're not going to change anything on that email. Branding, I'm going to touch very quickly on. This is if you want to get creative with the way the form looks and you want to add a little banner to it. There's some image requirements down here. If you've got a graphics person, this is a nice thing to have. So you can upload a graphic from here. Just click on it, upload. It'll tell you if it's the wrong size, but just follow these dimensions and you shouldn't have any issues. And now we're going to go back up here. And this is the registration link. This is, if you right click on this, you can just copy that link address, or you can click copy invitation and send this entire little blurb to somebody in an email, post this in a Facebook page or something. This is your opportunity to do that. You're never going to be copying a link that people will join the meeting directly. They're always going to a registration form. Now, can you see the registration form? Am I Branding? You can see it? Yep. Okay. So here's your registration form. If you added a banner, that would be up here. I'm going to go ahead and register just to show you what that looks like. Sorry. Oh, for goodness sakes. Nope, that's not working. I'll type slower. There's a reason I'm doing this. Select no phone number. All right. Anybody want to call me? Here's my number. Comments, questions. Your people are going to say nice things. Can't wait. Register. They're going to see a screen like this, but they're also going to get an email. Now, I'm going to refresh my screen. And now when you go to your meeting and you go back into your Zoom, you're going to see registrants. This is where I saw 50 people and freaked out. And now there's over 80 of you here. So hooray. And this is where, if you want to take a look, you click on view, you'll see the registration list. What I like to do after somebody has registered, if somebody registered like a week ago, I like to send a confirmation email the day of the event. And this is how you would do that. If there was multiple registrants here, you would just click this button and it would select everybody, and you click resend confirmation. Sometimes you have to do multiple pages, but this is a really good feature. So it's just automated, super easy. If you decide the day of the show that you want to add some information that you're sending to everybody, you can go in and edit that email and then resend the confirmation with new information to people. So that's also a really good feature. The last thing I'm going to show you, right here, now that you've got this meeting created, if you're going to be doing multiple shows, you can just click right here, save as a template, awesome concert series template, save, move on. And the next time you go to create a meeting, go to your meeting templates, click, use this template. And now pretty much everything, if you've got generic information that you've added in all your meetings, you can just save it and reuse it. All right, really quickly, the most unintuitive part, and again, this is outlined in the document I'm going to share with you, how to get a report. There's no way just from within the meeting to see a report of the people who have attended. So weirdly, down here under admin, account management, reports, meetings, and now this is today's meeting, but if you're looking for a report for a meeting that's happening next week, if you want to download something, just make sure you fill in your dates so the range is correct, and it'll show this series. I'm going to click generate. I do want all registrants. Then it flips you right to the report queue. And sometimes this takes a little bit and it'll say processing. We're just going to click download. It's going to give me a place to save. I'm going to save this. And this is just basically an Excel spreadsheet that'll have all your, I'm on the Mac, so it's going to do weird things that I'm not going to, all right. So it's going to give you a spreadsheet. So hopefully that is, boy, I zipped right through that. And I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And again, I just want to say to you, that looks like a lot, but when you're comfortable with it and you do it over and over again, and once you've created your template, it's all very intuitive, step by step. I've got the instructions out there, which I will share with everybody. And we'll address questions. Should we address questions about this very thing now? Do you think that makes sense rather than moving on? All right. Are there any questions? If you want to raise your hand and ask a question, that's great. I'm not seeing any questions. Can you show schedule change? Oh, you mean like if you've made a meeting and then you want to change it? Well, this is actually a really good thing too, you guys. If you change, let's see if this is the right screen. If you change the date of a meeting, so let's just say I decide that I want to edit my meeting. Okay, so you can edit your meeting at any point. If this date is going to now go out to October 3rd and at, 5 p.m., I can go ahead and save this, and it's going to ask me, do I want to notify the registrants about this change? And of course I do. So you can say yes. If I made a change that's just going to confuse them when I've changed it, then I absolutely do not want to notify them. Like if there was a typo or something I'm fixing, you don't want to bombard them with emails, but important information it's going to automatically send for them. Okay, does that answer your question, Mark? Hopefully. Okay, cool. All right, good. Oh wait, Chris Valillo has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Chris.
So Annie, for those of us that are going to host showcases for the virtual farm concert, is I'm going to send us a template to work off of, or do we need to create this entire thing as you're outlining here?
You're going to need to create it yourself because it's going to be your own Zoom account.
Got it.
Yep. And as I said, they've got step-by-steps for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks.
Thanks. Oop. Sorry, Brandon. All right, moving on to the next. Brandon, take it away.
Hello. Hello, everybody. All right. I guess basically I'll start with, start with a couple things like why Zoom? What's the draw for Zoom, in my opinion, is, as some of you may know, if there's some musicians in the audience, some musicians in particular might not really like Zoom. There is some compression that happens. They've recently done some amazing updates that really improves the quality of the sound. I'm not going to dive too much into that stuff. I gave Annie some links she's going to be sharing with all of you with some tutorial videos I put together for things like how to, first off, a tour of the Zoom app to kind of get you comfortable with it and find out where things are. Also, a little overview of what's main settings you want to change on the Zoom website on your account to make sure that you've got certain things in the right place, like as far as security stuff. A few other things like a security splash page just for some small settings you want to make sure you have in place to make sure you don't have any security issues on Zoom. And before I move on from that, I just want to make sure that everybody, yes, it is possible that people could come into your Zoom meeting and provide some issues for you, but I manage many shows a week, and I've been doing so for months. I've only ever had one real issue with somebody coming in and causing problems. And it wouldn't have happened. I learned from that mistake. It wouldn't have happened if I had had all of those settings dialed in and right. So as long as you take the necessary precautions, you have nothing to worry about. So I don't want anybody to be, to not do a show because they're worried about that. The chances of it happening, as long as you take the right precautions, are very minimal. But moving on from that, I think the main thing about Zoom is, everybody knows how to use it. Your grandmother and great-grandmother have probably used it a few times in the last few months. So there's no learning curve for your audience there, mostly, which is kind of nice. But I mean, the biggest thing is the community aspect of it. And right now it's hugely important. In the last few months, a lot of, everybody's careers have been wildly interrupted, especially for musicians who are used to playing on the road. And yes, you can just stream right to Facebook and you can stream right to YouTube, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But offering your fans another opportunity to actually really connect with you, I think is really important. Even if, most of our shows, for example, we have a Zoom, it starts in Zoom. And so there's that community aspect, maybe a little bit of a live audience thing that I'll explain in just a moment. But we also stream it out to Facebook and YouTube. That way, the people who are on Zoom all day and don't want to be a part of a Zoom thing, they can just watch and enjoy. But the rest of the people can come into this inner circle thing where they can actually interact with the musician and maybe ask questions at the end, or even just see a song circle at the end where their favorite musicians are all talking and communicating. And it really, it's an experience they've never been able to get even at a live show, so it's taking advantage of a way to connect with your audience and grow your audience in a new way, I think. So I don't think that anybody should really discount that. As far as that, I would just want to go over a few best practices, and then I'll give you a little rundown basically of what I do and sort of how I manage my shows. Because I know some of you are running venues, some are just going to be doing house concerts, some of you are probably artists. And the way that I do things is probably not the right thing for everybody, but we're just going to be giving you guys some options so you see what different routes you can go with this. So some best practices. It's always important whenever we're talking about anything online, live streaming, especially with live music involved, to first off, you need to have decent internet, and Ethernet being plugged right into a hardwired cable right into your computer will make all the difference in the world, especially if you're a musician. If you plug into Ethernet, you automatically have better audio and video quality. There might not be a huge difference. And if you were to do a speed test on your internet for Wi-Fi versus Ethernet, You might not see much of a difference, but it's a stability thing. Wi-Fi goes up and down, up and down. And when you see people who have live streams where their audio cuts out occasionally, or even if there's a little bit of static, that could just be that their internet connection is unstable and dropping. Or if you see it where their audio and their video gets out of sync, and the sound is happening at a different time than the video, that's internet connection. So it's really important that any musicians, or if you're a venue, that you have that conversation with the musicians you'll be working with prior to the event. Like, so when I do a show, I have a checklist of things that I go through. First off, I always send the musician a direct link to download the newest Zoom, because to make sure that they can make use of the newest high fidelity sound settings, which really makes a difference. And then I send them a link to one of my videos I made that shows you how to get the sound settings right in the newest Zoom. And that's something that Annie will be sharing with all of you guys. And any of my videos, you guys, that we're going to be sharing with you guys, feel free to share it. You know, if you want to use them as templates to give to your artists, like, absolutely go ahead. You all have my permission. I'm not going to get offended in any way, shape, or form by that. So I always send those things out to everybody, because we always want to do a sound check beforehand. Because even if you've got a really talented musician who can achieve good sound with their normal setup on a stage, this is a very different thing. And it's usually hard for an artist to know what they sound like on the other end of the internet, you know? So even if they think they've got it dialed in, there might be a little bit of a disconnect. So I always do a sound check with all the musicians at least 1 hour before the show, usually an hour if there's many musicians. If it's a big show or like a folk festival, we might want to, you know, kind of do a preliminary sound check just to make some small tweaks. So if at the point they show up for the sound check, they've already gone through those settings, I know everybody's starting from the same place, they all have the newest Zoom, then the sound check can usually go fairly quickly. At that point, what we're normally looking at is doing small tweaks on gain, or mic placement is a big thing too. You know, if, for example, I don't want to get too bogged down in the sound check stuff, but you know, if you're doing a sound check with somebody, if they only have one microphone that they're going into for their instrument and their vocals, placement is everything. If you're having trouble getting the balance right, you know, it probably needs to be a little higher level with their mouth so that you can pick up the vocals better. Little things like that. If the instrument is a little bit too loud, you know, they might want to even just tilt their guitar a little to the side so that the bowl isn't kicking the sound right into the microphone. Little things like that. But I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. That's something you can really only learn by doing a lot of sound checks with people. But that being said, as some of you probably know, what I do is I basically manage the whole like online event experience, whether it's a concert or whatever type of event. So what I do for my clients is they inform me, hey, I booked a show. Here's the venue. Here's the contact information. Here's the date and time. Here's the format we're doing it in, you know? So then I'll book the Zoom link. I'll schedule the live streams and link them all up. So I'll handle the Facebook, the YouTube end. And just basically then I'll give the venue and the artist, here's all the links we need. Here's all the tip jar information for the artist. And then I'll put together graphics, like a title screen graphic. Because what we do is usually we have everybody come in 30 minutes before the show. Everybody can chat a little bit. And then 10 minutes before, I'll start the pre-show where I'll put up a splash, just a screen, basically with the title, some information about the artist and the venue. And then I'll have some background music going on. Royalty-free background music is always the best, is the only thing I'll say about that. and then that gives me time then at that 10 minutes before mark, I'll start the live stream. And I will, the way I have a little bit of buffer time in case there's any issues, because, you know, we're all at the mercy of the internet gods, and they are very fickle beasts. So it's very important to give yourself a little extra wiggle room. So that way I can double check, make sure nothing's going wrong. We're all good. And also there is a tutorial video on how to schedule a live stream for Zoom into Facebook and YouTube. So I in one of the videos, I explain that. So hopefully that'll be helpful. And then one thing I want to talk about too is then the artist will come up normally 5 minutes after the scheduled start time, because most people aren't on time for an online event. So we normally give a couple minutes of buffer time. So I'll normally put on the graphic on the screen. The show will begin in a few minutes. so that people aren't freaking out going, oh, did I miss it? Am I late? Am I in the wrong space? And then, so basically during the show, during the Zoom thing, the coolest thing about Zoom is that we can have an interactive show. So this is something that Don White pretty much pioneered. So what we do is I'll show a little video like this, for example, at the beginning, and we'll just tell everybody, hey everyone, the cool thing about Zoom is that we can all hear each other laugh and applaud. So as long as you're in a quiet space, then we can keep certain people unmuted for the show. But you have to understand that on Zoom, if you're unmuted, if you crack a can of beer or are eating chips or your phone rings or your dog's barking or a train is going by outside your window, it'll ruin everybody else's ability to hear the performer because everybody will hear it just as loud as the performer. So as long as you're in a quiet space and would like to just applaud after the songs and maybe laugh at the key times, this is how you volunteer to be muted. And I'll show this video and I'll explain to them. If you go down to the bottom of the participants window, you click on this button and a list of names will pop up. As long as you're on a computer, it's a little bit different on an iPad. And at the bottom of this list, of this participants list, there's this blue raise hand button. If you click this button, you're signaling to me that you are in a quiet space and that you would like to volunteer to be unmuted. Now, we don't obviously need everybody to go through this process. If there's 100 people unmuted, it's going to be, it won't work. It's just going to be too unwieldy. Normally we get like 8 to 15 or 20 people unmuted, and that's like a really good number somewhere in there. The cool thing about having them raise their hand is, for example, if you look at our participant list right now, we've got 64 people in the meeting. For me as a tech, managing all of that and going through and finding people and muting and unmuting, it's kind of a lot to deal with. But if you raise your hand, all those people with their hand raised jump to the top of the list. So now we've got a pre-vetted live studio audience, basically, and I only need to manage those couple of people. So once their hands raised, I'll go through slowly and unmute them one at a time and listen, make sure that they're quiet. Sometimes there's a background computer fan they might not know is there. So I'll unmute them one at a time. And then once I find a good number, then I just monitor those people and the show will go on and I'll keep an eye on it. And if there's any noise from it, I'll mute that person. And if there's a problem repeatedly, I'll lower their hand. They're no longer in the pre-vetted list. So that way we can get, basically live studio audience stuff going on during the show, which really changes the feel for anybody in Zoom and even people watching on Facebook and YouTube. Hearing live interaction, just completely changes how you're receiving the show in your brain, and it makes you feel like you're a part of something. So it's a little bit tricky of a thing, and you would need the musician can't do it themselves. Whoever's the venue could do that, or you need a second person, which is sort of the role that I fill. Another thing that I wanted to go over really quickly is that it is very easy. A lot of musicians are worried about getting sound on Zoom. You have to work at it a little bit, but you can also have really terrible sound on Facebook. You can also have really terrible sound on YouTube. We've all seen really poorly put together live streams, and it isn't, necessarily that the musician doesn't know what they're doing. They might not have had the right support, or they just didn't go through a sound check. It's easy to get it dialed in if you take the time. I'm going to show a really quick clip of Chris Matthews, who is if you guys don't know her, she's a very talented musician. I've worked with her a few times on a few shows in the last couple of weeks. I'm pretty blown away by her, but I'm just going to show a couple seconds of this clip so you can see that this was all done on Zoom. She's got her sound really, really dialed in.
The title track for my social justice EP from 2016. That's how I'll depart. And when you find yourself incapable of seeing eye to eye, remember when they go low, we go high.
Yeah, so like I said, it's very possible to get it dialed in. You just need to take the time, and I would encourage any musicians not to feel discouraged because it's a little bit different and the sound quality isn't perfect. In my opinion, especially with the new sound settings, you're looking at a 3% reduction to 5% maybe in sound quality And I'll tell you right now that you might listen to it as a musician and you might be able to tell the difference, but your fans absolutely cannot tell the difference. And gaining the community aspect of it is absolutely worth a very small reduction in quality, in my opinion. I know some people just, Zoom isn't for them, and that's totally fine. All right, let me look through my little notes here and see if there's anything else I wanted to touch on before we go to questions or move on.
I'm going to interject here, if that's okay, Brandon,
Yeah,
while you're
go ahead.
looking at your notes, because there were a couple of things that you brought up that I think would be, I think they're probably in the videos that you sent also, so people can go back and look, but muting and allowing presenters or allowing your attendees to not be able to unmute themselves is like
Yes.
today, you guys are not allowed to unmute yourselves. There's just too many of you. And so depending on, that's about managing up front. And those are some default settings that you might want to make sure that we know how to do.
Yes. Here, let me check one thing real quick, and I might be able to show you what she's talking about in more specific detail. I don't have, so in one of the orientation videos I made, basically where I'm showing you the app, I show you where all those settings are. So the basic settings that I go through before a show, is I double check and make sure that everybody is muted when they come in. That way, if somebody shows up in the middle of a song, there isn't a large cacophony of somebody washing the dishes or running their garbage disposal. So one, everybody is muted when they come in. B, I don't allow participants to unmute themselves. I want the control of that, right? I don't want anybody to just be able to come in and take over the mic and ruin the performance. It's my job to basically vet people and keep an eye on things. So I'm only going to unmute somebody if they've already volunteered and gone through that whole hand raising process. And then I unmute them carefully and quietly, and I listen. And if there's an issue, they're out of the pre-vetted list. I lower their hand. They can no longer be unmuted. Also, turning on the waiting room is always a good security measure, because if somebody is if somebody's up to no good and they get the link to your show, if you leave them in the waiting room for a few minutes, chances are they'll probably just leave. But not that you want to leave people in the waiting room a lot, but it's a very small deterrent, right? The other settings, security settings, we can just go through all of these real quick. For a visual aid, check out one of the video links that Annie's going to send you. But at the bottom of your screen, you're probably all familiar, there's a share screen button. Right now, you guys are not allowed to share the screen, but I'll go through the sharing options and make sure that only one person can share at a time and that only a host can share. Because let's talk about the worst case scenario, right? If you accidentally or somebody accidentally posts a direct Zoom link to Facebook for your concert, first we tell everybody never share the link, right? Just the meeting and ID and passcode are the only things you should be sharing publicly. If you're giving somebody a link in an email or in a private message, that's totally fine as long as you give them the disclaimer that they do not share it themselves. But worst case scenario, say somebody just posts it all over the internet, then the security settings you want to go through are waiting room. Nobody is allowed to unmute themselves. And actually, you know what? I can share this. I've got this. This is one of the things you're going to be sent as well, but I'll just walk through the list with you real quick. Mm-hmm. So make sure that everybody's muted upon entry, which is an option you can check on the More button underneath the participant window. Make sure that the waiting room is on. And then under the Share Screen button, you can click the little up arrow button and go to the Advanced Sharing options. Make sure that only the host can share. And then there's a security button at the very bottom. And you can turn on or off from there people's ability to chat. You can double check. Some things are redundant, like you can turn on or off participants' ability to share screen there, rename themselves. You can also remove people from there. Or if you have a problem, you can lock the meeting so nobody else can come in. So as long as you go through these couple of security settings, the worst case thing that could happen, if somebody comes in the middle of your show, the worst they could do is paste some stuff in the chat. They already aren't allowed to make noise that anybody can hear. They can't take over the screen because you've got an artist spotlighted. So the only thing, like the one time that we had bombers come in, was, you know, me and Don were testing, and we posted in the middle of a show, we posted the Zoom link in a YouTube chat. And immediately we had, you know, there's like bots that can go out online and can grab a Zoom link if you post it. So we immediately had like 8 people come in very quickly. And I had the waiting room on, you know, but the names, some of the names were, you know, like Catherine, you know, very common names. You wouldn't think anything abnormal. And they came in, but because I had all those settings right, the only 2 things that could happen is that if somebody had been looking in gallery view, they would have been able to see their video, their little thumb stamp size video, if they were looking through the gallery view. But because I had already spotlighted everybody, there was only 1 or 2 people who had chosen to go to gallery view and look through it. And they commented to me and were like, hey, something weird is going on this person's screen. And then they started posting stuff in the chat. So like I said, this is the only time this has ever happened. And what I did, nobody else even knew it happened. None of the other guests saw or heard anything, probably didn't even see it in the chat. The artist didn't know what happened. So what I did is I went to the security button. I shut off the chat so they could no longer post anything else. And I reported them to Zoom in the security button and removed them from the meeting. And one of the settings you change that I show you in one of the videos on the website is once people are removed, they can never come back into the same meeting again. They're basically banned. Gotcha. So yeah, so I don't want you to be worried about it. You know, it's as long as you take the right precautions, there's no concerns, you know. And I guess with that, I'll wrap it up and we can move along.
Brandon is like, has done, this is the 4th time we have tapped him for our Tech Talks. I just want to say that he is, he's got so much knowledge, and I will tell you this, he's becoming very, very popular. His email address is in there. He's still willing to answer emails from people. He hasn't like tuned us out yet. So, but I think Brandon is the next talk we're going to have is for him to train others who want to do what he does. Because I have a sneaking suspicion there's going to be a market for more and more Brandons out there in the world. So Brandon, thank you so much. I know we'll have time for questions and we'll circle back around, but let's bring Elaine into the conversation.
Hi, folks.
Hi, Elaine.
I kind of approach it a little differently because I'm not a musician. I'm not a tech person. I am a house concert host. My main point here, the main thing that I'm trying to do is keep the music alive. I know that even when musicians go back to doing in-person shows, I was just talking to one of the people the other day who in the UK who is doing that. It's going to be a very limited audience. So even going back to live shows, it's not going to be what we had before. So I promote what I decided to do, because I had a private house concert, is to continue as a house concert, but to do it online. I use my same email list, but I do have a website, which we posted in the chat. And depending on the performer can use their email list or they don't have to. I had one performer from Martin Joseph from the UK who said, listen, I think I tap my audience a lot. If you want to do one, I will do it for you, but I don't want to overtax my audience, which I could understand. And I said, that's fine. And especially when you're doing these, one thing that I came to realize quickly when I did different places in different times is you have to be aware of time zones. That people, if you're doing a show at 6 o'clock at night, it's midnight in the UK, it's 1 o'clock in Europe. And we had one person who had actually come in earlier, talked to me, said he would see me later. He was a friend of the musicians. He ended up coming at the wrong time because he thought it was the time zone that the musician was in, which was New Mexico, and he was in the UK, but I'm in Texas. So I try to make it clear, but people don't always understand that. So that's one thing. I think it's important to keep my community together. I've been doing this since 2008. And I just feel like without contact with my community, it's going to fall apart, basically. I think it's important to keep that sense, and I think that's why Farm keeps doing things, SWRFA does things, NERFA, all of Folk Alliance in general. We have to keep our community together. I have been lucky. I would say, I don't know if it's impossible, but I would not want to do these Zoom shows alone. It's very important to have helpers, especially you do have people using the chat. I'm busy coordinating things. We use the chat to put the donation links, the merch links, and also for people to talk or request songs. I'm very lucky because I have tapped my family. My son and my daughter are both involved in technology. My daughter is actually over in the Netherlands. My son is in Austin. We're all coming from different places, but we come together on this. I think it's great what Brandon does as far as selecting the people. I don't do that. I just let the people unmute at the end of a song, clap, ask questions. We've had some just go, yay! And the musician will say, oh, that's so good to hear that. You know, so, and my kids aren't really kids, they're 28 and 30, but they say it's like a game of whack-a-mole, you know, because if they see someone who's making noise and shouldn't be, they will mute them. But we don't have too much trouble with this. One thing that I do is I do offer my audience that if they're unfamiliar with Zoom, that they can contact me before, we can go over it, we can get online. I have done that, and yet some people still get online right before the show and still have problems. So we have to work that out. I also don't put it out on Facebook or YouTube or anything. This is a private show in my home, just like a house concert would be. If you don't come to the show the day of the show, you miss the show. I do have a YouTube channel that I will put on a couple of songs from the show. And I used to do that with my house concert. I don't put on any of the discussions. I just put on the songs. So the idea there is you want to see the show, you have to sign up for the Zoom show. Mine is short. Mine's about an hour. It sometimes goes over to about an hour and a half. 45 minutes of music and about 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A. And I know the last performer that I had was kind of wondering what the Q&A would be like. And after he did it, he said he really liked it. And he said it was so nice to have people talking to him about, we had one question about creativity, another question about, do songs come from bad times that you've had? Questions about particular songs. This was about the indigenous people and how he came to write that song. So it's been, or songwriting, Martin Joseph explained how he actually starts with a song. I think to me, it's a different thing than a house concert, but it's something that can continue on after this is all over. As far as sound check, I try to do it early so that if they need to get anything different, they can. But then I'll do it a little right before, just in case anything has changed. I just feel it's very important to have it be interactive so that when people come in, a lot of the people I know, or like the last one we did was with people from Canada, but I had gotten to know some of the Canadians before they came. So everybody sort of interacted. I think it's important to connect with the audience. That's what a house concert is all about. Be prepared. And another thing that I have thought about just before coming on here is, if you're not sure, I don't know how many people here are musicians, how many people are hosts, but if you're not sure about, should I do this or shouldn't I do it, join with somebody who's doing it. There's no reason that it has to be your own show. Depending on your Zoom link, you can have up to 100 people or up to 300 people. Some links even go up to 300. It's a lot. It's a lot of people to manage, but once you get going, it's going. So I would say I give instructions at the beginning, keep it simple. As Brandon said, people know Zoom, they're familiar with it. My sound, the sound is, I don't worry about sound because I'm not the musician. That's not my issue. The musician has to have that. We do the sound check. Hopefully, if they sound terrible, I will tell them that and we'll try to remedy it. But the musician's the one that's going to take the hit because they're not going to get the donations. So, and I think most musicians are great as far as deciding what mic they should use and all that. I don't get involved in that. I have enough work. One other thing to mention is I do a different registration process, mainly because I am continuing with the same one that I've always used for my regular house concerts, which is I have a Google form. I have people sign up on that. That's what I've done before. So I'm keeping it more or less the same as my house concerts have been. I've just put it online, and some people have decided, some people that always used to come aren't coming because they say, well, I don't think I want to watch it online. Other people have come and they said, oh, we get a chance to travel. You know, I had one person, and the video is different. The first time we had, and he was in front of an open window, which some people criticized, and but I had some of the audience say, I loved the window. It made me feel like this was in New Mexico. So, and the last one, the performer was in his kitchen. He even told people where the bathroom was, that he could make some tea or, you know, what else he could do in the kitchen. So each show is unique. So go for it, or join with somebody who has. It will help the musicians. It'll keep your audience together.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Elaine. Thank you. So I really, now you see why I asked Elaine to join us. She's been at our peer sessions quite a bit, and I just have been really inspired by you jumping into this in a way. And I love that you talked about doing registration differently, because I also don't want people to get freaked out by all the extra things that you can do. There's also ways to do things very simply, and our goal here is to give you options and encourage you. So yeah, there's been a couple of questions come in. I just want you guys to know we've seen them and we will address them, but we're going to pass the spotlight over to Louise and Bruce and have them share their wisdom.
Howdy, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, I will try to not summarize what everybody else said and try to keep as succinct as possible, and that will allow us to get to the questions. But I think all of us that do these Zoom concerts do things a little bit differently while trying to encompass the overall picture. So I too am huge on sound check and getting the sound right, dialing that in. The things that I like about Zoom are simply the ease of use. It requires very little technical abilities on the part of the host. You don't need OBS, you don't need StreamYard or YardStream, you don't need a lot of things. Zoom encompasses an awful lot, but you have to remember that Zoom was designed for people to talk to each other, not play music to each other. So you really, once you overcome that and understand how the format works, you can then help your guests receive the music as well as your artists perform the music. But understanding the principal concept of Zoom, I think, is paramount. So for me, it's ease. The registration process is great. I use somewhere in between what Elaine and what Annie are doing, and I take all the information from the registration and put on a Google form. For me, that becomes the basis of my mailing list. I send out a newsletter every week. I send out a reminder every single Monday morning. Tonight's the night to register. The concert's tomorrow. And then before the concert, I send everybody that registered a reminder, don't forget you registered. So the mailing list has begun to grow pretty substantially over 14 concerts, and it's really helpful to have that feature through Zoom. The other thing is the cost of Zoom is pretty cheap. On the entry level, it's free for 45 minutes. It's about $15 or $16 a month for up to 100 people. I've extended my account to 500, which is about another $50 a month for a couple of reasons. One was in anxiety as you got to the 100 level. Was anybody going to miss out on the show? Louise had a concert that she had about 130, 140 registrants, and so we just upped the account. I had the same anxiety because after 100, nobody gets in. I also cross-post over to several Facebook pages because part of what we're trying to present is not only community within Facebook, but also presenting as many artists to as many presenters as possible. So that is part of the goal for other presenters that maybe don't want to come into the Zoom, whatever, they just want to watch it later or at their own convenience. So there is that flexibility. I also saw it as a sign of progress that I was able to expand the account from 100 up to 500. I have marketed it as only being 200 people. So some of you are here this afternoon, or come Tuesday night, you're going to hear the spiel that it's up to 200. But I've always tried to create a sense of urgency and a sense of loss, and try to get people to register in advance so that I'm not taking last-minute registrants, the night of. The other thing too is I think that the days of pajama gigs, animal tricks, and all that kind of stuff is over. I think that the audience is now prepared for a more sophisticated product. They're willing to pay for a sophisticated product, so give them something that's good, that's a quality product. Really, the tricks that I've learned mostly is from the registration process, getting the nuts and bolts out of the way up front. But the registration enables me to really have a very accurate, very complete database. I know how many times people have come to each show. I know who has come to all 13 shows. I know who's only come to one. I know that approximately 25% of my audience is from me. The other 75% are going to have to come from the artists every single night. We know approximately what our donation base is going to be. We set up goals throughout the evening and remind people how we're doing through the goals. It's not a hard sell, but I run it kind of like a radio fundraiser. This is our goal for tonight. This is what we've raised. This is where we're at. This is what we'd like to get. I also talk about the annual goals because those numbers are much bigger. And as we chisel those things down, there's a greater sense of community and accomplishment. And really, the underlying word, I think, for all of this has been the sense of community that's built with the artist to me, with me to the audience, and with people coming and saying, I'm so happy I come here every single week. I don't know anybody. Or all the people I knew I loved, or I knew one and the other three I really dug. Nobody said this was, not for me. They'll come for one artist and never come back. Very few people have said this is inferior quality. So I'm really proud of the product that we have been able to develop. And I think as you've heard, I know my numbers, and I think that's very important if you're going to have any kind of expansion, and as you're trying to garner people for your program, knowing what you can deliver for them and what you expect of them. So we set up a profile of what I will do, what you will do, what we will do, what we hope to accomplish. So that's, again, all of us are learning and adapting bits and pieces of things that work well for us and continuing to learn. So I mean, I too picked up a bunch of great tips. So the thing you said, Elaine, that's probably the most important for me is the footnote. You can't do this by yourself. Please do yourself a favor. Do not try to do this all by yourself. We host 4 artists. It would be impossible for me to do it by myself. So you need that second person, either in the same room, another room in the house, or remotely, to assist you. And that makes for a much more cohesive product and a better experience. So thank you.
I'll bring up the tail end here. And I've seen a lot of participants here. We have performers, we have talent buyers, we have venue owners. I want to speak to that a little bit because something we all were dancing around here, but I want to say again is that the sound quality has improved so much from back in July when we first started hosting through the updates in Zoom. And the other thing is, and I thought for sure he'd say that because he says that every time when we start off, that you should be wearing earbuds or headphones. I represent an artist who is an excellent technician and musician, and he just says, oh, I'm not going to sound so good on Zoom. And I said, it really depends on how the audience is listening. And if they're on Ethernet and they have good headphones, or we see people, we can tell on Bruce's show, people have cast it on their TV, they've got it through speakers, they're going to get better sound quality there. So I think that's really important that people know that. And for the musicians out there, and being a talent buyer and doing sound checks and doing advances, remember those advances on contracts? It's really important, even for a Zoom show, that when Brandon or Bruce or Elaine, anyone sends you the instructions, please go and install it and come ready. I can't tell you the number of times people come and say, oh, was I supposed to do that? Oh, yeah, what was that? Where is that? And Brandon, thankfully, has taught us to be very patient. Say, okay, well, go to the little microphone, hit the button, and we walk them through it. But you can get folks that are on their phone or on an iPad or on an old version of Zoom, and it can throw you for a loop. And you have to have instructions for all those versions. So any musician that wants to try this, install the latest updates, do a practice run and make sure that you know about turning the original sound off. There are all these little tweaks that will make for better experience. And also just supporting, I think, all of these shows for the artist. When, I help Bruce with his series, and as far as coming to a Zoom show, that should be on people's tour schedules. Yeah. Because, what Elaine's doing, what Bruce is doing at Music My Mother Would Not Like, what I'm doing for the ISIS Music Hall, it's all online, but included as part of your tour. Because when people come to any of these Zoom shows, they're going to say, wow, I saw some great talent. And when life is normal again, which it will be, I'd like to book them. Just really quickly, mostly I have been doing Facebook Live for the series that I host at the ISIS Music Hall. I call it Mountain Spirit Acoustic Series. And it's been okay, but I recently had an incredible concert with Gretchen Peters. And she is a real high-level songwriter out of Nashville. And I was really nervous. And she said, will you run the Zoom meeting for me? And because of my good teacher, Brandon, I said, okay, I can do this. So that night, I was the host and Bruce was the tech. So you can switch roles, but again, it's good to have a helper. And we now, Elaine, we have a family member. My son comes over. He sets up the lights for us and he does admitting, because that's very time consuming, and watching who's coming in and keeping track of that, and the spotlighting. So I love it. And this, just in the 3 months that we've been using it, the sound quality has improved. The artists love it because it's interactive. And I do come on and do the little introduction about the blue hand and all, and I really encourage people to please turn your camera on, and I tell them where that is. See the little stop video, take the red line off. Doesn't matter if you haven't had a haircut or your cat's on your lap or you're eating ice cream, because it makes such a difference. And we've got to about, I don't know, maybe close to 50% of the people will. So those are just little things that I've picked up on working this, and I get nervous every Tuesday night, but then I love it, and I'm very grateful to Farm and Brandon and everyone for all that we've learned. So let's just keep doing it. Thanks.
That's awesome. Thanks. Thanks, you guys.
Can
I'm
I
sorry.
just add one thing
Yeah,
there, Annie, to what
sure.
Louise just said? And this is for musicians, and one thing that I noticed, if you're doing a Zoom show, don't just say live stream. I noticed that I've got somebody coming up and I've got to get in touch with her because she put live stream. It's very different if you're doing a Zoom show, and promote it as a Zoom concert or a Zoom house concert, if that's what it is. Because I know my last show, all of a sudden, a blast went out the day before that you're invited to a house concert, and I had 300 people the day of the show want to get into the show. I mean, it actually, that's a different story, but yeah, don't just say live stream. Say it's a Zoom show.
Registration.
Right.
Yeah. You know, something kicking off this conversation, and as so often happens, forget half of the things that we talked about talking about. And so I appreciate Brandon starting right in with the why using Zoom. And I think all of you guys are doing a really good job of explaining and hopefully inspiring people, because I still heard a lot of, even, you know, as recent as last week, people are like, I'm never going to use Zoom. The sound sucks. You know, it's whatever. There's just so many people. I think people have made assumptions based on what they've heard, and they haven't actually experienced it. And maybe you did have a bad experience one time. Try it again. It's the same thing. But um, we had a couple of questions that came in, and um, I think one of the things we were talking about was chat. Hold on, Brandon, I'm going to let you answer this question out loud. I answered it in the chat, but Bob is asking about. Oh no, I'm sorry, my bad. Sorry, there's so many chats in here. This is not the one. The performance rights ones we're going to talk about briefly. We don't really have an answer to that, the performance rights question. Somebody was asking about performing, like are we protected under Folk Alliance for house concerts, performing cover songs on these? And I have to believe that the same rules are applying outside as with Facebook, that you're fine performing covers and until somebody tells you otherwise, but we don't have the answer to that question. So I'm so sorry. I think it was about the Ethernet cables. Somebody said their router's in their basement and their computer's upstairs. And is there any length that is too long for an Ethernet cable?
No, not really. You can get 100-foot cables. What I would recommend in that particular case is that your router being in your basement, you're probably wasting a lot of the signal that you're paying for. So I would recommend in that particular case, I would call up my internet service provider and tell them that that we want it moved up to somewhere a little more central in the center of the house. That way you can get a good signal in any room. Secondly, then they can just run and say, I need an Ethernet going into this room, and they can run it for you. And that way you don't have to worry about drilling holes and all that stuff. Let them do it for you. It's probably worth a $50 service call or whatever it is. But that being said, I mean, you can just buy a 100-foot cable and drill the holes yourself if you're comfortable doing that. And it really won't make much difference at all. I mean, it'll still be better than your Wi-Fi, especially if your router's in your basement. You're probably not getting very stable Wi-Fi on the far end of your house like that. So I would always highly recommend an Ethernet cable.
I can tell you that our Ethernet, our wireless router is attached to the wall in the basement. And we have two 300-foot cables, one that runs all the way up the basement, all the way through the house, and it can pretty much reach anywhere I need it. And then another one, then there's 3 outs on that modem. So we have 3 cables running to different computers. So they're not expensive. I actually
Not
put
at
some
all.
of this information up on the farm website too. So for those of you who are uncertain about it, Elaine Kozloff mentions we talked about muting people or unmuting people. Brandon, I think you were talking about how you leave people unmuted through the show.
Yep.
And she says thoughts on muting during the artist performance and letting people unmute themselves to applaud afterwards. I've done that as well. But
Yeah, that is absolutely something you can do. It just depends on the audience mostly. So a quick explanation of why I do it the way I do it, and I do it differently depending on what the artist wants, but largely we do it the way I described before. If we leave it open where people can unmute and they can unmute at the right time and mute themselves while the performance is happening, you're opening, if anybody can just unmute yourself, you're opening yourself up to some potential troubles. Like I said, if there's somebody in there that shouldn't be there who's flying under the radar, and then they're allowed to open up and take over the microphone and control what everybody else is hearing, me personally, I'm not comfortable doing that, just because the last thing I would ever want to happen to one of my clients on a show that I'm working for them is have it go very poorly because somebody came in and did, put something very inappropriate on the screen or over the microphone. So that's why I don't do that. I do have a private show that's like that I work with one of my clients where he's on Patreon or Patreon. Everybody always makes fun of me for the way I say that. And we do a private Zoom show for the patrons only. And so during that show, we leave it open, and we've been training them over a few shows, like, hey, go ahead and unmute yourself at the right time so you can laugh, applaud if you have a comment between the show, but keep yourself muted, be quiet during the songs, and it works. But as most of the shows, we're opening it up to everybody. We want as many people to come in as possible, so that kind of an environment needs to be more controlled. So
yeah. And you can leave people. I'm curious, Louise and Bruce, do you guys allow people to unmute themselves and mute themselves, or do you control that yourselves?
Well, I do the same little speech as Brandon's in the beginning, and our crowd, which, we get new people all the time, but our regulars, usually I get a couple of people. And believe it or not, even if we have 80 people, which is about what we're looking at, 80 or 90 tonight, if Bruce and we're in the same room, but way in the other side. So if Bruce and I are unmuted and two other people, and we're doing this, it sounds like there's a room full of applause. I don't have too many people that really feel comfortable doing that. But what we do now is we tell everyone after the encore, the very last song, Bruce will say, Louise is going to click the allow everyone to unmute, and would like you to all applaud. And then at the end, most of them, well, a lot of them will, and then they'll clap at the end, and then we put it on gallery view. That's a lovely thing we love to do at the end of the show, is let everyone see each other and chat. Man, we had Christine Lavin last week, and she had us just literally in stitches, and people don't want to leave. We finally have to say, good night. Yeah. But that's what we do. We will do a few people, but wait, and at the end we'll unmute people.
I think the big thing with it is explaining to people that if for whatever reason the audio changes in their environment, so their microphone is picking up sounds that we don't want, we will mute them. Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And then if they feel the need that they stop crunching chips, or the siren's gone by, the dogs stop barking, then they can ask to be re-unmuted, and Louise will, because it's nice to have that additional sound. Even though we're on opposite ends of the room, and you can change the cadence of your clap and
we practice so we sound like a crowd.
Nice.
It's like a laugh track. But
yeah.
But I think the big thing about it is the appreciation that the artists have for the human contact. I mean, if you've only done concerts other than Zoom, you've only sung or performed or played to a white light. And this is the first time you get to see other people looking back at you. You get to see the tears, the smiles, the laughs, the happiness, the joy.
The cats and dogs.
Right, the whole yard.
Yeah.
You get the cough from the crowd. And I think that there's real value in that. And as we've said in Soundcheck, for some of you, you have not heard another human being outside of your own bubble for 6 months. And you may find this to be pretty moving and very cathartic. And usually after the first song, they're like, "Whoa, yeah!" They're absolutely blown that this happens. So
Bummer, yeah.
we try to encourage that, especially the camera view, so that the artist can see, as opposed to just looking, at the white light on the top of their computer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm gonna not to belabor the muting point, but but I do. Linda is saying, I want to address, Linda, your question about whether Zoom will bring back the ability to unmute everyone without having to ask everyone's permission. I think so. Just so I'm clear, because we've done the peer group sessions with Farm, we just leave the ability for people to mute and unmute themselves open. And that would solve your problem if you let people do it themselves. So what we're talking about is just kind of the nuance between whether or not it's better for your show if you have the control over that, or if you trust your audience to have the control over that. Elaine, I'm just curious, any couple of thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, there was a change because you used to be able to unmute a participant, an audience member. You can't do that now because of privacy issues that Zoom went through. Zoom went through some security things. And that's why when you can't unmute somebody, you can mute them, you can't unmute them. So that means that basically you have to ask them to unmute themselves. So
Right.
that's why I've been lucky, and like I said, I have these two kids that take it as a game to meet
The
people.
whack-a-mole.
But I think when we're at a house concert, if somebody coughs, somebody coughs. I mean, it's not, you can't. I don't think you should. I mean, once again, mine is just me, just my bubble here, the people that come that particular day. But I think it's great when somebody at the end of a song just went, way, instead of just clapping. So
Yeah, I agree. And I can tell you the one thing that we've talked about, Brandon, maybe, I don't know if your hand's up to ask, but if you've got the spotlight view on and somebody's unmuted and they cough, not only will you hear it, but they'll
pop up on screen.
pop up on the screen. So there's that level of disruption, which
right, and
you
I
may or may not want to have. Right.
I do tell everybody to mute themselves, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is it's not like the end of the world should something
No, right.
happen. One other thing that I was going to mention too is webcams, because I know that I have a big difference now with a new webcam, and it doesn't even need to be an expensive one, but get a new webcam if you don't have one that's up to date. They go in and out as far as the ability to purchase them but just get a relatively new one. It does make a difference.
I agree. And I think you're bringing up a good point, which, we could talk about a lot of things on this in terms of technology. Somebody did mention on their form when they registered, it's a whole different talk about microphones, interfaces, video cameras, lighting, what you present. I think that is something that we have done a little bit of and will continue to do because it's always evolving. But Chris Matthews was using a USB microphone. It's a Shure microphone. That's all she had. And it sounds great. I've seen other USB microphones that don't sound great or heard. And so, it's just, you're going to have to find what works for you. But sorry, I didn't mean to go down. We have talked tech. There's actually not a lot of other questions. So, but I know that our friend Sue Fink is in the crowd, and she is just starting a really cool endeavor on Zoom. And I asked her to join us. So I'm actually even going to spotlight you, my dear, bring you in the fold. And maybe you can tell us, you said you had some thoughts to contribute, and I'd love to hear. Can you unmute yourself?
Here we go.
Oh, are we both doing it, Brandon?
Yeah,
That's the problem. When Brandon and I are both in charge, it's like, wait, don't click that button.
Okay.
Hi, Sue.
Hi. Welcome to the Virtual Dream Cafe, which is a screen in the background to make things festive, and that hides the unvirtual mess behind me. But the virtual Dream Cafe is just, I'm going to be doing in the round shows, but I I tend to ramble. So let me just start first with the muting. I have done some Zoom shows, and maybe the settings have changed, because what I would do is talk to everyone before the show, and then I'm like, I'm going to mute you all, and then I would mute them, and then I would say, I'm going to unmute you all, and then I would unmute them, and I'd ask them a question, and then I'd mute them. And I always told them before I did it, because someone might be in the middle of a private conversation. I don't want to embarrass anybody, so I give them a little warning, unmute. I did a show for a library where some guy came in from France, and he said, Sue, I'm with my friend Bob, he plays the bass, I'm going to play the bass, and I'm going to play guitar. And I'm like, go ahead, because I'm going to be muting you. And anyone can sing as loud as they want. No one's going to judge your voice, because you're all going to be muted. Let's have some fun. So people are dancing and singing. Some people actually did dance. It was great. I loved it as a performer, and I think the other audience members enjoyed seeing everybody's reactions as well. It was really fun. So I miss doing in the rounds, and I've always done in the rounds with local people, and then I've asked other people, and people just say Annie Caps was in one of my rounds with Jim Beiser. It was great fun, and I miss that spontaneity, and so that's what the virtual Dream Cafe is going to be doing, starting October 7th with Megan McDonough and Edie Carey, and then 2 weeks later we've got Jack Williams and Still on the Hill. And then we've got Noah Zacharin and Rebecca Hasso, who is local. So Anne Heaton and Katie Dowell. So I'm jumping in, and usually I would never jump in until all my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed, because I could plan all day long for the rest of my life. I'd be happy never even taking an action. But I just thought, I'm never going to do it. So I'm just jumping in, and I'm building the scaffolding on my way down. So it's just kind of scary. And what I'm doing is I'm using something called Event Combo to both promote the show, and they will collect the tickets. They're not tickets, they're donations. I'm asking for donations because I have found that with Zoom shows, people do register. I've used that lovely registration form before, and it's great. But sometimes then they don't show up, and then those seats are now not available. So if you want, I could share a screen and show you what one of those looks like. It's kind of cool.
Wait, say that you're using the event thing. Actually, Sue, what I'm going to do is say to you that I love this, but at the 3:30 mark, we're at about an hour and a half. And what I would love is maybe a time for us. Is it quick? What's it called? This is your event something?
Yeah, what it does is it lists all the events, and you're able to put in a donation amount. So you put in the donation amount, and then I can send emails. It's very similar to the registration form, but I can send multiple ones, and I'm not going to send the Zoom link until like right before the show.
Gotcha.
And I have created a little thing that talks about Zoom and how you can test your Zoom first to make sure that it's working. And then I'm going to ask people if they want that, then they can email me and I'll just send it to them.
I was going to say, what would be great is if you wouldn't mind posting that in the chat for me, like post the link to the service you're using. Because Matthew asked recently, did I miss something about monetizing these? And I think I'm pretty sure what most of, like both Elaine and Louise and Bruce are doing is on a donation basis. There is an upfront cost to come. You can attend it whether you donate or not. And a lot of people are really, strong advocates for that kind of model, but I also know a lot of people who would rather take the money up front, and it ensures the payment for the artist and also ensures a seat. And so there are definitely ways to do that, but it would have to be outside of Zoom, an external kind of Eventbrite. Sue is going to share what she's using, and do share a link to your show, honey, and then I will post that for everybody, and we'll make sure everybody knows. What I love is that, like, this is yet another example of somebody just sort of diving in and doing this. So I would kind of like to wrap up, if you guys don't mind, with one sort of go round of just a quick, like, any last minute thoughts you have about this, of encouragement to all of you house concert hosts and venues who've been feeling a little hesitant to dive into this, and what it would take and what Farm can do to help you do this. Because I think was my number one goal, is to get more concert hosts out there while we're looking for, more music to be had. Oh, Mary Sue, you had a question about overlays. I'm sorry. Yeah, you got to combine OBS. Brandon's been doing that. So I think we might have to have a follow up on this. And we're going to talk about
Yeah.
some more. We're talking about another follow up on OBS. And so look for that in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about doing that. Okay. I'm committing to it right now. So Brandon, you get 30 seconds. Give me your last minute.
The only thing I would say is that, you know, it cannot hurt to try. And the worst you're going to do is you're going to build some community with a couple of people, see some people you haven't seen in a while. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's the worst thing that happens, then it was a night well spent. That's all I got.
Thanks. Elaine?
Yeah, well, I just want to really thank Farm and Annie and everyone that's put these on. I feel like I've gotten to know people in another part of the United States without having to fly there. And like I said, try it. If you're a musician, if you're a venue, try it. Go to one or two of these. I would suggest going to a couple of them. They're out there now. Go to a couple of them, see what you like. Jump on with somebody. Like I say, if somebody said to me, can I bring myself and some people? Sure. You know, so whatever feels comfortable. But I think we're going to be in this, unfortunately, for a little while longer. And even after that, it may be a good alternative for some people who aren't traveling.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Louise, Bruce?
I think you're really limited by your imagination and what you're willing to try. I encourage you to, as Elaine said, go see what some other people are doing. I think we're one of the few people that are doing a showcase format. Lots of people are doing a showcase, or in the round, or workshop type stage. We've tried that as well with a blues night. That was quite successful. And we actually tried a jam song where one person started and it went to the next four people. Louise said, no more of those. I hope I had a good time. That's the last time we're doing it. I hope you enjoyed it. Take lots of pictures because we ain't doing it again. But again, I think you're really limited by what you're willing to try and trying to build on other people's successes and sharing the information. So, if there's anything I can answer, please do contact us directly and have a go at it. But do your homework, and so you're not presenting something that's half-assed. I mean, it should be something you're proud of, and that you present a quality product and are trying to deliver a quality product. And each one that you do will get better than the next. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the point too that Brandon and several of us, we can help another venue or another series or another artist. We've done ours, but if you say, well, I want to do it, but I don't know how, that's what Brandon's great at. And remember, there's always free parking, front row seat, the best drinks in the house. These are all the selling points while we're all staying home. So
Free
thanks
parking.
a lot. See some of you tonight.
Perfect. I can't even imagine any more. But Sue, as long as you're here joining us, I'm going to give you the one last word before I start plugging what's left at Farm. Go ahead. You should be able to unmute yourself.
I didn't push any buttons this time, I promise.
There we go. There we go.
There you go.
I don't know. Just I do miss the community. I just love the little in the rounds, and I love the community. I'm trying to build it. I'm just trying to figure out how to get people to come, and I invite all of you. Gosh, I can't think of anything to say quickly because I don't know how to say anything quickly.
You're so fun. This is what I love. I think that, so what we have here are a house concert host, a venue booker and booking agent, a radio DJ, and now concert host, and an artist. So we have all the gamut here. So anybody can do it. You can all do this, make it happen. And I think it would be really exciting. Farm has, I've got a lot of wheels turning. Somebody asked about Twitch. And we are doing a tech talk on Twitch next week, people. Yes, we are. TikTok was last week, and Twitch is next week. So get your geek on and come join us for that one. We're very excited. But before that, 2 days from now, the incredible John McCutcheon is going to be doing a workshop just for farm. If you're not already registered, go back out to our website. I think the email list is out there, but farmvirtualconnections.org. Register for that. And we have not decided yet if we're going to live stream this. So, but you want to be in the room for this one. I know you do. It's free. Come and join us. And then there's a lot more stuff happening. So I hope you will continue to visit with us on these awesome talks. We're going to have you put your gallery view on so that the people out in Facebook land, all 2 people, one of which is me who's watching, the other one's probably Brandon, but we would love to get your faces. So if you're muted and you want to unmute your camera, I'm going to put you in gallery view and have all of you applaud our wonderful panelists today: Brandon O'Sullivan, Elaine Hayden, Louise Baker, Bruce Swan, and our special guest, Sue Fink. And thank you all so much for everything that you're doing, all you artists for making music, all you venues for helping us make it happen. And I hope we see more of you out there in Zoom land. So this is the awful part that I hate. We're going to click the end button and say goodbye, but have a great afternoon, and we'll see you all on Thursday for John's. Take care, everybody.